Okay, so now that we have developed our style guide and we have developed our wireframe, we're going to look at the kind of final phase of making our infographic, which is really adding in all of the graphic elements, making it less info, more graphic. So what I have done since the last video was I took my content sheet, I took all of the stuff I had written up, and just threw it into my wireframe. So this is just a content dump, purely. It doesn't really matter what size everything is. It doesn't really matter what font it is, what colors. None of that matters yet. Just dump all your content into the places in your wireframe where you intended to put it. So this should not look perfect. It should not even look good, really, to be honest. It should just serve the purpose of getting all of your stuff in one place. So we've got our wireframe with all of our content dumped in there, and we've got our Health Tech Jam style guide. I went ahead and revised my 3 color schemes. I kind of realized that this, even though it was dark, actually is pretty good saturation. So these 3 colors, the yellow, green, and blue, if you remember, that's an analogous color scheme. So those 3 work together. I know that I'm going to have white as my icons, so as I had mentioned before, it's important to include white in your color scheme in that case. And then I have a gray to sort of offset other things. It's that neutral tone that I'm going to use to balance some stuff out. So again, I know that this right here is going to be a major important part of my infographic because it was the logo. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this big image up here, and I'm going to paste it right here. Now, the kind of annoying part is that it pastes on top of everything else. What a lot of people don't know is that PowerPoint actually lets you arrange your objects. So if I right-click this and say Reorder Objects, it shows me all of the different objects in my entire thing, in my entire PowerPoint slide, which is pretty cool. So you can layer all of your shapes. You can layer it however you want. But let's say you're like me and you know that you don't want to entirely reorder everything. You just want to send this to the very, very back. I'm going to go to Send to Back and hit Send to Back. And now it's underneath all of our other stuff. I don't particularly think that having it right at the top up here is very interesting, so I'm going to kind of move it over a little bit. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, and I'm going to kind of put it in the corner here. Now notice one thing. If I squish this in like this, it literally squishes the picture. To resize a picture in Microsoft Word without squishing it, hold Shift while you resize it, and it'll stay the right proportions. So I am going to put this here. Since this is really close to the edge, I am going to take a shape. So Insert, Shapes, and I'm going to go ahead and make a nice, quick navy background image. Because in my style guide, I have all of these colors pre-done. With my shape selected, if I go to Shape Format, any of those colors that you have should be in your recent colors list. So that makes everything really easy. I'm going to send this to the back as well. Unfortunately, it's not quite right in here. So let's see if I can get that darker color. Yeah, that looks much better. Now, with my image in particular, it's not perfect by any means, but it'll do. Notice how there's kind of a weird overlay over there that I don't love, but that's okay. Because this is not a real infographic. So I've got my text, I've got my image, I know what size I want it to be. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to resize it. I'm going to make it pretty big. And I'm going to change it to this font that I wanted, and I'm going to make the text white. Now this is pretty distracting right here. Is this the most important thing that I want to have in here? I already have Health Tech Jam in the logo right there, so I really don't need that. I've already got UIC over here, so I don't really need that either. The only important thing really is first annual, because we want to let people know that it's the first one ever, because that's pretty cool. This is super imbalanced, right? So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Maybe pop this up here and scooch it over so that it's in the center. Still don't particularly love that, so I'm going to raise it up maybe, and maybe make it right justified so I can squish it up against here. Now the only real problem I have with this is that the white looks really out of place with the rest of the green. So I'm sort of just gonna move things around just a little bit. I might make it just a little bit smaller so that it fits in there really nicely. And let's zoom in and take a look at this. Notice that it's right at the edge of there, and it fits along with that phone really nicely. So we don't have to worry too much about some of the weird distracting things that could come with aligning objects like that. Again, I don't really love that. So what color could I use instead? Something that's less bright. I'm going to use that gray color that I have in my style guide, and automatically that makes it a lot more neutral, a lot easier to see. So is our header a little bit boring? Maybe, but I'll leave it alone for now because we've taken up a bunch of space, and I think that's a pretty nice immediate call. So now that I have that out of the way, why won't you stop moving? I am going to delete this shape outline that I have in here. Perfect. So now I just have my header. All right, so let's work on the rest of this section. Remember that white space is a good thing. We want to include white space so that our viewers have a little bit of time to rest their eyes in between doing stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these boxes in here that are not necessary anymore. I'm going to start making some of this stuff a little bit more interesting and making it the font that I had decided to use for my subheaders. Remember that for our subheader, we decided it would be all caps. So I'm going to make sure that I am following that rule. And I think 6 could actually be a lot bigger. I think that would be much more interesting. Now, what could be better than this? What could we do to make it so that 6 stands out, but our event doesn't have to stand out necessarily? I'm going to give this its own text box. I'm going to take this out. And I'm going to drag it up here. And pop it down there. Now we have something really eye-catching, really easy to see immediately, but it's not like it's taking up a ton of space. Plus, now we have a lot more room to make this a bigger, more eye-catching thing. So 6-hour event, I can beef that up too. We haven't changed the color of that yet, but what could be nice is including one of our little icons in our style guide. We've got our little alarm clock in here. I'm going to copy and paste this into, where did you go? Where did it go? Aha, there you are. Way down there. I'm going to copy and paste this here. Only problem right now is that it is white. It's bright white, which is what we told it to be. And that's fine, technically. But what could we do to make a white object stand out? We could either put it on a darker background, but honestly, I kind of like the black on white right here. Or, you know, we could potentially make it navy or something. So let's see instead of doing that, if we can make it stand out in some other way that's more interesting. If I look at quick styles, I can change the background of just this image. So I could make it a single icon, which honestly doesn't look terrible. Doesn't look great either, though. I could give it some sort of gradient in the background, where it's going from one to another, but, you know, I'm not so sure I like that either. So I'm gonna bring it back to just regular old white. And I'm gonna see if there are any other ways that we can make this look a little bit more interesting instead. Well, either way, in the meantime, let's just go ahead and fill this background with something really simple and straightforward. We can give it a drop shadow, and the way that you would do that is going to Format Pane. You can give the actual square itself a drop shadow. Now, one thing to be aware of is that drop shadows can look really cheesy really fast. So it's just something to be aware of. They can look nice, but they can also look awful. So it's something to remember if you're thinking about using them. Not always the greatest idea. Let's see here, color. Oh, here we go. Here we go. This is what I was looking for. Picture format. You can go in and select the actual color of the item. Aha! I knew I was missing it. And we've got our color in here. So if I have a picture selected, it brings up picture format. I could go to artistic effects and use some of these funky things, but I don't really want to do that. Instead, I'm just going to go to color. And I'm going to select either a color in here, or I can go into here and select one of my own colors that I have chosen from here. So I've got the gray that I had selected before, although that is way too light. So I wonder what would happen if we made it that green color. Nope, still way too light. So I guess if that is all too light, let's use our blue. All right, so now we have an image that used to be white and is no longer white. So what you want to keep doing essentially is to continue playing with all of these little elements, changing your text, changing all of the things like that, until you finish with this one section in particular. Once you've finished with that one section, you're going to move down to the second one. So before I finish up with that top one, let's go ahead and start on our timeline. If I go into shape format with my outline selected, I'm going to change this shape fill to the yellow color that we picked. Something that's really bright, something that really stands out. So automatically when you see it from far away, it's got kind of a nice flow to it. And this bottom one, I think I'm going to make the green color that we have. And I might have like a white line in between them. But now when you look at it from far away, it's got that big banded sections thing that we really like to see from a lot of infographics. Something that breaks things up really easily. So in terms of this stage of everything, it's a lot about experimenting. It's a lot about looking back at your style guide and relying on the things that you've set up for yourself. And a lot about backing up every so often and making sure that it looks good as a whole.